and welcome back to THU TV. This is day 2 of the interviews that we're doing on the afternoon sessions. For those of you who are watching, in the morning we have Ian, who's been talking to a lot of people about the visual effects world and animation. I'm going to be talking in the afternoon about technology and creativity. And in the evenings, we have Haya, who's going to be talking about the business side of things and the education part of things. So very excited to be here. I want to remind everyone to check out THU TV. While this is live and free, THU TV is available video on demand. And if you want to get more information about that, just go to trojan-unicorn.com/TV and find out more about what that is. And today, I'm joined by Pedro Fernandes. Thanks so much for being here, buddy.
It's a pleasure, Chris, to be here. It really is, especially amongst all these amazing artists that we follow and kind of representing this very small niche of architectural visualization in such an event.
Well, I think it's important. I think it's so great that, this was an idea that Jeff Muddle and I were talking about. It's like we need to find a way to convince more of the architect and art-viz people to come here, because I think there is a lot of influence that we can have from them and to them in a lot of ways. And I think it's important, and right now it's great to see so many art-viz people at this event to sort of look at that. And so a couple of things that we should know. You are Portuguese, right?
Yeah. So I'm originally born in Portugal, and I studied here in uni, just in Lisbon. So at the moment, of course, I'm in just south of London in Surrey. But yeah, it's such an honor to see something like an event like this, of this magnitude, and so well organized with like the most impressive artists from all over the world here. And it's such an honor to see like that this is organized by someone from here, and I think Andre's not even from Lisbon; he's from Setúbal.
Right.
And to see this, what you guys have created here, and it's such an honor being Portuguese and seeing everyone, all the production crew. I'm amazed. Really amazed.
I'm so glad you're able to do it, and hopefully you can be one of the people who is influential in the architecture and art-viz world to spread the word about how awesome this event is. Because I think we would love to be able to find a way that we can have that more of that cross communication between different creative groups. But I've actually been a big fan of your work. I've seen your work a lot.
Thank you.
And I think that this, when they asked me to get a guest for today, I said Pedro would be fantastic, and I'm so glad that you were able to make it, because there is something very interesting about your work that's actually way more parallel to some of the work that's done in the film industry. So why don't you tell a little bit about your workflow and how it differentiates a little bit from the way that other people think of architecture visualization?
Yeah, so it's funny you mentioned that, because I was talking outside with this character artist yesterday, and when I told him I do ArchViz, he thought immediately, okay, he does marketing of like hotel suites and this type of thing. And then I showed him the portfolio, and he said, "Wow, this is actually quite close to concept art." And I said, "Yeah, I mean,
it is, right? I mean, you are making a concept art in a lot of ways."
Yeah, exactly. And what we do especially is we really get the initial embryo phase of the project. So it's really a concept of the project that we help develop with the architects, and it's all still very conceptual. And I mean, from the get-go, when I got into this and really started to see just how closely it links up with matte painting, with concept art, and I started following these guys, mostly due as well to some of the companies I'd been at in London. I really thought, wow, this is great, because I get to do architecture and I get to do graphic and concept design, which I love.
Right.
And we kind of merge the two with what we do at Archi9. So it's very much about getting those early concepts, but applying techniques and the type of expression that you have in concept art. So it's definitely quite interesting how those two worlds are very similar. And a lot of the guys here that I've seen their talks, the guys that I've known, I don't know, since I've started, my career in this, and seeing them here is like, it's amazing for me. Like I was just mentioning, I met Sparth and other greats that we have all their books and we follow. We get their concepts sent to us. And that in itself is just amazing, and it kind of also inspires us. And Yeah, it's really enjoyable. You mentioned as well about kind of getting the word out, and
Yeah.
we've got a video on YouTube that's going to come out, and I've already put it in there, Trojan Horse, and I'm hoping to record from here something because it's just blowing my mind.
Oh, I'm so glad. I'm so glad.
It's incredible, like what's been done here. I can't say it enough, and it's like Jeff was saying. You're gonna see it's gonna slowly creep up on you, and before you know it, you'll feel the tribe thing, and
Right.
you really understand how that works. So yeah, it's incredible.
Really cool. Well, why don't you tell people a little bit about Arky9? And
Yeah. So basically, Arky9 is a company that I started probably in Portugal. The name when I was here, I was freelancing like 60 km south from here, and I was in this really beautiful village close to the beach, and it all started from there. At the time, freelancing for like foreign countries, the normal stuff you do, starting to get into architecture and archviz as a solo freelancer. And then that kind of, when I moved to London to be with all these amazing artists, be with the best and try and be good at what I was doing and learn the most I could. After that period of freelancing, I decided then to really kind of build a company, Arky9 Visualization, and it's mostly dedicated to architectural visualization, but again, it's in the early concepts of it. So I guess we've kind of got a niche of a niche where we do the concept work and we also do the normal marketing work that you see, but we've kind of tailored our niche and it's become that small niche that's grown and that we're known for. And a lot of what we do is also based very much on the concept world. So I do a lot of tutorials online to kind of show people, hey, this is another way of seeing things, another way of doing things.
Right.
And it highly connects with concept art, matte painting, and these types of things. Our client base is pretty much all over the world, which is also great because you contact with a lot of talented architects. I mean, architects are our main clients, so I'm an architect myself, you're an architect as well, so we all kind of speak the same languages and we know how crazy we are.
Right.
Or how crazy everyone in this field is. And it's really great to express what the client wants to see and design a little bit as well, because the designs still come in an initial phase and we complete these. And I guess, we that's one of our big segments, but we're also slowly moving now into VR, AR.
Interesting.
And understanding all this world. But our main thing is how do we translate our vision? And this was another thing that I'm kind of looking around here and seeing how these guys are doing it, because they're like a few years ahead of Arky9, I think. And it's really looking at how they translate that in video games and how they keep the creative part and they bring it to VR and AR and these types of new technologies. So that is basically Arky9 in a nutshell.
But don't you think that VR and AR, I actually feel the opposite. I think that the architecture people are ahead of the game in the VR AR world. Because I think that there's something very interesting. So for example, let's go back to some of the renderings that you guys have done. What I find fascinating about it is you do it, as far as how you actually execute it, you don't build it out to the extreme in a lot of ways. You do you focus specifically on form and light. And you get form and light composed into those images, and then you add everything else as you go, just actually a lot like a traditional matte painting would go. But what you also do, which is interesting because you don't have to do it, you try to tell a story within that image. And don't you think that, tell me what you think about the role of an architect in telling stories and how he tells that through images.
Well, this is another thing where I think it really connects to this concept art world. Firstly, the way we build it, right? So the way we build things is very similar as well to concept. We've done images in a day, half a day, because it's very much about that expression, that initial, I'm always like mentioning to the team, it's about the thumbnail and the feeling that gives you. And then the story is the relatability that you have. So the characters you put in your scene, kind of making the architecture come to life. And it's this symbiosis between characters, light, color, and form that really make our images. I think that's one of the main forms. And you don't need much to tell a story. You just need light and shapes to kind of, bring everything together. And
Right.
there's some other amazing artists that, with 3 or 4 strokes, like the Disney artist yesterday, it's like 3 or 4 strokes, and he's defining everything.
Right.
And that's what we're trying to do in an initial take on things. And I think architects especially, they're an interesting bunch, and it's an interesting way that they have a connection with images, because images are really like the vehicle that transmit the architect's vision. So I'm always mentioning, like, this is the architect's baby, right? We got to deliver it into the world in a really good form. And the first thing that, like, when we have a chat with any client is really to understand, even if they just send the model, they send the basics, and they say, here you go, guys, take it and make this image from here and here and there. And I say, well, let's wait a minute.
Okay.
So I try and dialogue and speak with them and really understand, what's the story? What are you guys trying to transmit? What are the connections, visual connections you want? How do people relate to your building? And this all kind of comes into play as images, So you're going to have a young and vibrant community in a health center or something like that. It can be, you can tell a multiplicity of stories around the visual, and the way that you represent it through the mood. The mood is one of the most important, right? Like, we've all heard of blue skies and green trees. That's like the big one, and it's probably one of the hardest images. But even in that, you have to kind of somehow tell a story. They want happy moods is something they say, like, they call it, I want a happy mood.
Right.
And even in that, you have to find a creative way of telling a story, instead of just placing, some green trees, a really blue saturated sky and some sunlight. Even that, there is an importance in how the people you put there, the way that you make the scene, the framing, composition. I think with us especially, our shots and the way they're set up, the perspectives we do and the cameras, also very related to this video game and matte painting was. So they're always tilted, they're a bit slanted, they've got something that's like dynamic. They don't have as much the architectural vignettes, which is something you see a lot. And that kind of might be a style thing that we have. We're not so much about the architectural vignettes, we're more about telling a story in a matte painting. So if you have a matte painting, you have this house in top of this mountain, then you have this man right in the foreground. You're telling the relationship there, and then he's looking on the vastness of the plains. These are all things we translate into what we do and the way we represent our images.
Well, I think it's really interesting because you said you went to architecture school, right?
Yeah.
And so
yeah.
I went to architecture school as well. And what you do immediately when you're in architecture school is you actually learn how to tell a story, right?
Yeah.
Every day.
Yeah.
Every day you have some professors comes by your desk and is like, tell me what you got. And you have to narrate a story about your architecture.
Yeah.
And that story has to be sort of put out there in some way. Now you can say it and you can have someone imagine what you're trying to talk about, and you usually have a few sketches here and there. But a rendering is supposed to be the accumulation of that actual process and what it actually means. And I think that's the thing that's interesting to me is narrative and how narrative has an important role in the communication of design. Yeah,
it binds the viewer to the image, right? So that's another thing that I've started to understand, which is that narrative is really what makes, it's kind of, you have the medium and you have your intermedium, right? And you have the final object and you have the person that's apprehending it. And if you make that final object more humanized, familiar to, a lot of the stuff we do is not like pixel perfect. It's very loose, because that we find also creates this empathy with the viewer. So it's probably to be seen from a further away level, and that in itself also, it just breaks down that space between the viewer. So someone who's looking at this for the first time has to feel that empathy, and that's our target audience. We have to convince people with the narrative that the architect's put together through his architecture or his objects or whatever he's creating. So we have to break that down. And university, Man, I used to hate those.
Yeah, but you learn how to talk, right? You
Yeah,
learn
yeah.
how to communicate those
Yeah,
designs because
yeah.
that's your number one job as an architect is to
Yeah.
communicate what you're trying to say.
I used to. Sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I used to have a teacher. He would say, if you only know your project when you can call someone over the phone and really tell him everything, tell him or her everything.
Without a single image, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's how you should be able to represent your project.
Right.
And that is the way to kind of communicate it through words.
Right.
And that, at school it was hard.
It was hard, but I think it's also an important skill that because there's a lot of people here who are coming from directors or trying to make shorts, et cetera. In order to do that, they have to pitch the idea, right? And the pitch is what basically what an architecture presentation is. It's a pitch, right? Yeah. So okay, you mentioned quickly that you were looking at some VR and AR stuff as well, right? Mm-hmm. What exactly are you doing in those areas?
Well, we're starting to look at actually facilitating things, so it's a lot quicker. At least we're starting to look especially at Unreal, but breaking down those barriers of making it quicker. This is one of the things that's also made it harder. So we want to kind of bring that into the concept art world of architecture. So bring that in a little bit. So that's taking a little bit. I know architecture is quite advanced with the designing and the VR, and designing in VR, especially with Microsoft HoloLens, etc. But what we're looking at is, breaking that down, also integrating a little bit of the marketing aspect of that.
Okay.
So that we can do also things that are more premium, develop also storylines, how VR can communicate, so through apps or through direct input, because there's still some barriers there. We find at least in what we've seen, and we want to see how we can take our storytelling through images to that third, fourth dimension in a quicker way than animating and in a more loose way. So that's really what we're trying to explore at the moment. And it's fascinating what's coming. Yeah.
I think that what I have found interesting is the fact that there's obviously VR is like such a natural fit for architecture in a lot of ways.
Exactly.
And there's a lot of companies out there, archivist companies like yourself that are already making money in VR. Right? I mean, that's the fact is that it's not like, I wonder what we're going to do with this VR thing. With architecture, it's a slam dunk, right? It's in a lot of ways. But you are right, because you do try to tell a narrative through it. So what do you think the struggles are of actually trying to create a narrative inside of VR?
Well, the first, the technical aspects, taking out all the technical aspects of bringing stuff in quick, getting it out quick, because this is a very vibrant, quick world. So you can't say, I'm going to deliver that in a month. You want something that's really relatively quick. Another is also you put on your headset, right? And then you take it off, you give it to someone else. This whole thing also creates another technical aspect of...
Oh, the fact that it's harder to get two people in the space
Yeah. But there are options now for this. But it's immense, because you're basically covered by this virtual world, and you can interact with it. And what we're trying to really understand, and it's the difficulty of how we can interact with this in a level where it's quick, efficient. We can give it to the client in our style and our form, so that they can give to clients. And it's more about actually it's not so much about understanding the detail of something, or that this has a shadow gap or something like that, but it's apprehending the whole experience of being in a space, understanding that space, you can basically deconstruct the elements, you can try a different design very quickly, but all with the quality that you can have with the atmospherics and things like this. This is something we're still working on and really trying to understand. Yeah,
that is a challenge. I think obviously now we're looking at, there's other solutions that are involving pre-rendered content that you can do in VR, which is something that I'm interested in finding out how that helps. But do you think that really is something that, because of the way stills now have gotten, rendering engines, offline rendering engines have gotten so good that they look, especially in architecture, they look completely real. Do you feel that the quality has taken a step back because you're no longer able to ray trace it directly, or do you feel it's just a little bit different and people are fine with that?
Quality is a step back in VR, you're saying?
In terms of if you're going to real time.
Yeah. Well, I think it's like every technology that develops, right? I've seen amazing things in real time. The quality is really out there.
But doesn't it take a lot longer to get there?
That's the thing. I mean, we're not going to create an experience in a day, whereas we can create 2-3 images in a day if we need to represent something very, very that has a lot of feeling in it. So
Right.
this is the thing, and time is money,
Right.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that it hasn't necessarily stepped back in quality. Maybe it's stepped back in how technical it is to get to that quality. Because I mean, I've seen amazing things being done in both Unity and Unreal, and it's really the promising stuff that's coming. Datasmith, V-Ray for Unreal.
Right.
There are a lot of promising things that are going to speed it up and are going to make the quality as great as it could be. So, yeah, I mean, stills will always be stills, right? No one's...
Yeah, I don't think their stills are going away. I mean,
Yeah.
people still like stills in VR experiences or VR experience. I think they complement each other.
It's true.
But I think you're right. I think the idea of interacting in a space together or having a discussion is hard. There are people that are actually trying to create technology to review work in VR so that one person, that's really kind of crazy.
How this is going to work is a tricky thing because, I mean, architecture has been communicated. I don't want to be one of those old school people, but architecture has been communicated through drawing for so many years, hundreds of years, and it's worked.
Right.
Are we overcomplicating things for our own good, or are we kind of developing things for a better good? I think it's the latter one. It's the second one.
Right.
But that technology, of course, it's going to go back and forwards and in a loop until we understand it. I think like things like the HoloLens, and I've seen like what exists now, where people have a similar program to SketchUp and basically extruding volumes, seeing how this works on a pedestrian level, seeing it from an eye level, seeing how it communicates with everything. You're basically seeing everything at the same time without looking at, a large-scale map of the city and then understanding that and then looking at a section and kind of filling in the gaps with your experience, because a good architect will fill those gaps in. But with the tool where you see everything immediately, you've immediately got this thing, wait a minute, I can just push this down, see it from a city level, bring it up, I can see how this works, I can probably run some simulations to see how the air flows through here, I can probably see structurally. So yeah, I mean, the potential is immense for what's coming, especially for architecture. And now it's up to the architects to do an amazing job to use that.
Yeah, hopefully that's the goal. But I do find it surprising that architects don't realize how much of a leap forward they have made into understanding VR compared to the rest of the world. And people should come to the architects and say, let me learn from what the architects are doing. The other analogy I always use is, I say that like architects never realized that they kind of revolutionized global illumination before anyone else.
Yeah.
And so
I remember from your talk.
and so I think that was an important part. And I was like, we did this. Like the architects have done this for a long time, and they don't even realize how much they've taken technology and really sort of made it mainstream. Because the VFX guys are like, no, we're the leaders of computer graphics, and I'm like, well, there's some stuff that's going on the side here that you may not be aware of. That's some people that you don't know that they're using this stuff every day. So I find it really fascinating. And let's see, we have about a minute and a half left here, but let's talk a little bit about where people can see some of your work and where they can go.
So our work is basically archi9.com. And
how do you spell Archi9?
So that's A, Alpha, Romeo, Quebec, Unicorn, India, numerical 9.
There you go. Wow, good for you. Were you in the military?
I've had to do this because it's in England, people are like, Archi9, Aqua what? And it's like, okay, so I had this on the board, Alpha Romeo Quebec Unicorn India 9.com, and our YouTube channel, Archi9 Visualization, and Archi9 Learn, which is all the learning part of what we have.
Okay, awesome. And you do have some videos up there, some tutorials.
Yeah, there are a lot of tutorials on how we do it, map painting in ArchViz, basically our process, a lot of information. There's one going up this Sunday as well, so yeah.
Oh, perfect. That would be great for people to have that as a resource.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
All right, well, this is great. Thanks so much for coming, and appreciate it.
It's a pleasure.